How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 17. According to this diagram, as the altitude increases, the amount of oxygen available decreases. That makes it harder for animals like the Himalayan yak to survive. Since they inhabit elevations between 3,000 and 5,000 meters, yaks have large hearts, large lungs, and special hemoglobin that helps carry oxygen more efficiently. Over many generations, the yaks with traits that help them survive low oxygen were more likely to stay alive and have babies. Then, those helpful traits were passed down to the next generation, making this a perfect example of natural selection. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 18. A gene called EPAS1 is involved in allowing animals to respond to a low oxygen environment. Scientists found that yaks that have a certain allele of this gene had a greater amount of hemoglobin, which transports oxygen throughout the body. An allele is just a different form of a gene, which in this case underwent a small change in the DNA sequence, also known as a mutation. And since this gene is found throughout the yak population, the mutation most likely occurred during meiosis in the gametes or sex cells of the yaks, making the correct answer choice 3. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 19. According to this diagram from a prior question, we saw that as the altitude increases, the amount of oxygen available decreases. Well, this diagram shows pretty much the same thing in terms of gas molecule densities. So, in terms of the carrying capacity for producers in these extreme altitude ecosystems, the reason why we don't see any plants or trees growing at those higher elevations is because less carbon dioxide is available to use for photosynthesis. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 20. Just like the yak, the pika is another herbivorous mammal species that inhabits the Himalayan mountains. Unlike the yak, though, the pika are small and lack a large heart and large lungs, yet are somehow able to survive at high altitudes and cold temperatures. Since they live in systems of underground tunnels that they dig and maintain, this is how natural selection leads to a behavioral adaptation for the pika to escape predators and the cold. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 21. This question is about biomass and energy flow. Biomass means the amount of living material at each level of the food chain. Producers have the most biomass, herbivores have less, and other organisms such as wolves, eagles, and snow leopards collectively make up the top of the pyramid as carnivores. When organisms use energy for life processes, some of that energy gets lost to heat at every level of the pyramid, leading to less biomass at the top. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 22. Although this diagram of a salt marsh looks pretty busy, we want to focus our attention on the smooth cordgrass heron that lives in the low salt marsh. Since salt marshes can be affected by tides and weather events, the smooth cordgrass population would be most affected by rising sea levels due to global warming that affects the tide level. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 23. These diagrams are comparing erosion on shorelines with vegetation and shorelines without vegetation over the course of many years. When there is no vegetation, the shoreline loses more land over time. That means habitat carrying capacity rapidly decreases in shorelines without vegetation that are affected by erosion. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 24. The following graph shows that sea levels have been rising over time and are expected to keep rising in the future. That means rising sea levels will definitely impact a salt marsh, especially within a low marsh, making the claim valid. If the sea level is currently here, then a rising sea level will force crabs, mussels, and worms to move into the low marsh. This will provide more food for the herons and egrets, allowing their populations to grow. You can also say that rising sea levels will decrease the habitat for minnows and silversides, which would then cause the populations of herons and egrets to decrease because of food shortage. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 25. This is a perfect example of why you should read the question first before wasting your time getting overwhelmed by this unnecessary chart. This question is asking about restoring a stable ecosystem. A stable ecosystem needs many different organisms interacting together, not just focusing on one species, not holding fish and water plants back from the shoreline, and not increasing the energy of waves. So the only answer that makes the most sense is planting vegetation along shorelines to help provide shelter and protection for the organisms. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 26. Although there are many solutions on how to best maintain a shoreline during a severe storm, they all have their pros and cons. Anything that reduces biodiversity or results in less vegetation can be quickly eliminated as choices. So while building a bulkhead can prevent erosion and increase biodiversity, installing an oyster reef is the more cost-effective trade-off since it increases habitat availability for other organisms while also reducing erosion. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 27. The following picture shows a shoreline in Oswego, New York, after Lake Ontario experienced record high water levels resulting from heavy rains and storms. When coming up with the best shoreline restoration solution, we need to factor in the cost of the initial construction, plus the ongoing operations and maintenance, the pros and cons of each solution, the aesthetics, and a discussion of social and environmental impacts. Although bulkheads are costly at first to install, they are a permanent and reliable solution to minimize shoreline loss while also maintaining aesthetics and recreational activities. You can also say that because the community is focused on the social and recreational value of the shoreline, a revetment is the best aesthetic option because it looks natural. However, while it is reliable and cheaper to maintain, it won't stop floods and has the highest costs. The best solution for Oswego is to install sills because they are not too expensive to construct, have low maintenance, and look more natural than some other options. Sills do not prevent the flooding of businesses, but they do slow down water rise while providing habitat for organisms and protecting wetland. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 28. When it comes to evolutionary relationships between organisms, like in this case of limb evolution between ray finned fish and tetrapods, one of the best types of evidence that suggests the organisms may share a common ancestor is similarities in DNA sections that control the development of these structures. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 29. In addition to having similarities in DNA, comparing the bone structures in animals that are currently alive to those that are now extinct is yet another example of evidence that suggests that all of the organisms shared a common ancestor. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 30. The evolution of limb development as a result of environmental factors can be explained with evidence in the following three steps. First, random changes in the genes for limb development provided variation for the process of natural selection to act on. Second, different limb variations will be selected for or against based on the habitat the organism lives in, like the underground environment for the mole or the aquatic environment for the porpoise. Third, organisms with beneficial variations will pass them on, which is called survival of the fittest. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 31. Transitional fossils can provide evidence that land-living tetrapods evolved from bony fish, which could be represented by species X. Species X was named Tiktaalik when fossilized remains were recently discovered. Since Tiktaalik has thin bones like the zebrafish and thick bones like the Acanthostega, This supports the claim that Tiktaalik represents an ancestral form between the two organisms. How to pass the June 2025 Biology Regents question number 32. In terms of the environmental factors present 385 million years ago, between the insects and spiders creeping around on land and the massive fanged predatory fish Rhizodus, Tiktaalik was able to access new food sources and evade predators living in the water because the bone structure of its fins enabled it to walk on land. For more videos just like this one, please visit biovideotutor.com.